Hello, I'm Rachel from Dwensa Garden in Ireland, and I'm behind the camera today to give you a tour of my glasshouse. In my glasshouse, I have a variety of subtropical plants and various other bits and bobs. I tend to favour succulents, cacti and South African bulbs. So if you want to hear more about what my collection's at the moment, then stay tuned. As you can see, there's a lot to unpack. So we're just going to dive right in, and obviously I'm not going to be able to look at every single plant I have. We're going to focus on what's looking good at the moment. So we'll start off here on the top shelf, and that's where I tend to put things that are looking good at the moment. And I've grouped things that need regular watering right down here at the door. And at the moment, as you can see, I have a lot of rhodoxus in flower, which are these tiny little South African bulbs that just flower for such a long time. These really are ideal pot plants. If you keep them dead-headed and fed, they'll flower all summer long. And I really love the presentation of the flowers. The petals kind of fold in on themselves so that there's no eye in the centre in many instances. And they're just so doty. A beautiful bulb from South Africa that's easy to grow in a frost-free greenhouse. Just behind the rhodoxus we have an orchid, and this is Coleogyne cristata, which is, I suppose, coming to the end of its flowering. Now this is an orchid that lives in the frost-free greenhouse. That's a 5-degree minimum or 41 Fahrenheit in the winter. This is an unusual orchid because it doesn't need to be kept in the house. It can tolerate lower temperatures than you would normally find in a house. Just to the left we have a variety mostly of succulents, some agave, some echeverias and some dioscorea, which are caudex plants which I grew from seed myself. Just look at this crazy little cactus in here, and I do think that the markings on this cactus, or I don't know, the presentation of the spines and the kind of Fibonacci sequencing that we see on the surface of the plant is so wonderful. And I just had to put it in a pot that would reflect the uniqueness of the cactus. And this one came from cactusireland.ie, so if you're looking for an unusual cactus, I do suggest that you check them out. And moving over here, yet more cacti, but mostly succulents. And I have a few gasteria in flower. Now you may be wondering why a gasteria is up here on the top shelf in full sun, and the truth is, well, it is a kind of dull day today and you can probably hear the rain in the background, but I put it up here when it's in flower, and when it finishes flowering then I will move it down to a more shaded position, and let me show you that position. So my Aloe collection is down here, and that includes the few gasterias I have, and they do need some shade in summer. I've been putting them for the last few years at the front of the house, which is north facing, in a sheltered position, but this year I'm experimenting with just putting them in the lower shelving, and I'm going to invest in some kind of shade cloth and just close this area off so that they don't get the full whack of the sun, because it really has been quite sunny here so far. And you can see how sun affects aloes over here. Now this is a gaster aloe called Green Ice, a beautiful cultivar, and this is how it should look. But if you expose it to too much sun, as has happened with this one here, these are exactly the same plant, you can see how washed out it becomes. Now I'm hoping this will go back to its nice green colour by just keeping it in proper shade from now on. And further along on the lower shelf we have mostly South African bulbs that are dormant at the moment. Until we get over here where we have my Disa orchids. Now these are orchids that like their feet wet, so they like to sit in rainwater. And I do have a few flower spikes showing. And this cultivar, which will soon open up with its enormous orange flower, orangey red flower, is Menez Tan. It's a Breton word, and I bought it in a nursery in France a few years ago. And down the very end, we have a wonderful trio. On the right is my purple tree crinum that is preparing to flower yet again. And it last flowered for me in December. So, oh, that's a really good result. If you'll do this every year, I'll be very, very happy. I did have this plant indoors for the winter. Look how that bud is just about to burst open with those beautiful pink flowers. And it's great to get some plants with those big, giant puffball flowers in flower early on in the season. The amaryllis and hippeastrums and everything, they usually tend to flower at the other end of the season. Just to the left is my giant caudex. It's an Ibervillea, which comes from kind of Mexico and the south of the US way, and this is my pride and joy, and for that reason I bring it into the house in winter. So it may be hardy out in the greenhouse at 41 Fahrenheit at 5 degrees centigrade minimum in the winter, but I'm not willing to risk it, so this is one that gets mollycoddled all through the winter. It's just come out now. Now you may see that there are some aphids on it, which I've just manually removed, and I must give this a hose down, I think. And just over to the left we have Dracaena Draco, which is the dragon tree, and it has suffered somewhat from being in the greenhouse over winter. It has done better when I've brought it indoors over winter, but I thought I'd be brave again and put it out because it's now quite a large plant, and yeah, it's awkward to bring it into the house over winter, but yeah, I'll have to think what to do there going forward. And right over here in the corner we have an aeonium on the shelf, but we are looking at a border that's planted up within the greenhouse, and right in the very corner there we have a variegated Tibucina, which has lovely soft leaves with a kind of pinkish border around the edge of the leaves, and yeah, I really love this, and plenty of gingers and salvias planted in the border as well. That border continues behind the plant stand, and then right up here we have two plants that are really worth mentioning. So on the right we have my Protea, which has been it's actually planted in a pot that's sunk in the border, so it's not in bed with everything else, let's just say. And it flowers regularly for me every spring. Now, I did propagate it last year, and thankfully 2 out of the 3 propagations seem to have taken, so I'll need to pot these on soon. And just to its left is a whole load of leafy goodness. Now this plant is called Muskia, and it comes from the from Madeira Island, and it's monocarpic, so once it flowers it will die, and I think this might be the year that it is going to flower because it is looking so bushy and gorgeous. A really fantastic plant. It's tender, of course, which is why it lives in the greenhouse. And just a little bit further to the left is Canna musifolia, which is the canna that looks like a banana. Hasn't really gotten going yet so far this year. I need to give it lots of water because this gets really quite tall, to about 5 foot. And by God, it's spreading at the moment in the border, so I am going to have to divide that in autumn. Just to its left we have Echium wilpretii. So this is an Echium from the Canary Islands, and if you have followed the channel for a while you'll recall how I grew loads of these Echium wilpretii from seedlings a few years ago, and through the swings and the roundabouts I was left with maybe about 15 in the end, which I planted out in the garden. And we had a harsh winter last year and I lost every single one, which is very sad. But I did put one here in the border in the greenhouse where it's warmer, and the result is that it came through and it's flowered. So there it is, Echium Wilpretii. I think it's just coming to the end of its flowering now at the moment, because it was covered in pink not very long ago. And as you can see as well, it's growing up at a kind of jaunty angle and has required some staking, but we'll forgive it that. I forgot to show you my Sobralia, which is that giant orchid down there in the middle of the cream staging, the kind of cream stand. And this is an orchid I've grown for a few years. I think many people grow it in the ground. If you live in Florida and maybe in the southern states, they can get away with it in the ground. But Sobralias, there are two types of Sobralias, and one of them are a bit more hardy than others. And this one, which is a cultivar called Mirabilis, I believe, is of the type that I would not get away with having it in the greenhouse over winter. So I have been bringing it into the house. But by goodness, it sure needs a divide. Now, this usually flowers for me really well. A profusion of flowers. Each doesn't last very long. I think the received knowledge is that they last just a day, a bit like a daylily, but actually they last a bit longer than that. And as long as you have lots coming, that isn't such a big deal at all. So quite a big boy, and I'm not sure I see any evidence of flowering at the moment. And I guess that's about it. I have been very busy in the garden at the moment, so one of the urgent things to do in May really for me is to take down the bubble wrap in the greenhouse and clean it out and set it up, which I've done now. So whenever I do that, I'm always very happy to show off my greenhouse, hence this video, which I hope you enjoyed. And of course I can go into a whole lot more detail if people are interested. So do let me know what your preferences are down below. And other than that, it remains for me to wish you a happy gardening, happy continuation for spring. And I hope everything's going to plan and that the weather isn't too dry or too wet and all that kind of thing. Thanks as always for watching, and I will see you on the next video. Goodbye.